Welcome to Becoming an Artist, Creative Secrets Revealed. And today I'm going to be chatting to the fabulous Michele Payne, who is a textile and surface designer. And we're going to be chatting about all sorts of things, including the 90s, grunge, following your intuition, blagging it, old Irish pubs in Brighton where I live, dungarees, and how to make contacts in the textile industry, how to freelance. We're going to be talking about creating an amazing portfolio. And we're also going to be chatting about indigo printing, which Michele made a slight mistake on when describing, but we've got a link to the proper process in the resources. And speaking of resources, you can go and grab all of the links that Michele has given out, and also this lovely diagram which I've created from our chat, which is becoming a textiles and surface designer at exact steps. So you can go and grab those at becominganartist.co.uk. So I hope you enjoy our chat and enjoy the episode. See you soon. So I'm honoured to have Michele Payne here, who on her website she says she's been creating surface patterns, placements and characters professionally for over 25 years. Bloody hell.
It's true.
Ages.
I know, a very, very long time.
And you've collaborated with lots of different people as well, haven't you? Pigeon Organics, Turtle Doves, Lily and Sid, Hebrew Home, and Lucy and Yak, my personal favourite. I love them.
Yes, I was very lucky to work with them. Yeah, I've had
fantastic.
A few good collaborations over the years. They're just the more recent ones, really.
Okay, so, cool. So what's the weirdest thing you've had your stuff printed on? Because you do all sorts of things, don't you?
That's a good question. The weirdest thing, I don't know what the weirdest thing is. I mean, I suppose I've had it on potty. I mean, I've had it on all sorts of strange toys and things for baby nurseries. So, yeah, I've had
that's
it on.
Pretty weird.
And doorstops.
Doorstops,
things like that. Cool. They're pretty weird. I don't know, weird-wise, what else I've had it on.
What's your most common thing? Is it fabric?
It's clothing, yeah. It's
clothing.
Clothes. That's the main one. And before that, it was women's wear. So yeah, it's clothing, textiles.
So you've moved. Do you think you've moved from women's wear to kind of more kids stuff? Do you think?
Yeah, I did. That's my main focus now. I decided to specialise in. I'm going to get confused with the years. So that was in 2004, around then, I decided to specialise in kids wear. When I went back to designing, I had 2 years of being a journalist. And in that time, again, for textiles, it was a textile magazine. And in that time, I didn't really design because I didn't have time, but I did sort of art direct and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so when I went back to work and I was in my 30s, I think I was 33 or 30, well, I would have been 34 in 2004, if it was that year. I think it's around then. I thought I didn't want to go back to women's wear because I felt like I was a bit bored with it because I'd done that before and for quite a while. And I thought, no, I really want to specialise in something else. And I found a studio that needed someone in Shoreditch and I went and worked for them. And it took a while because it's a very different thing to design for kids wear. But it was a bit of a learning curve to go back to designing after 2 years away as well.
Yeah, so, absolutely. What was the reason for your move to journalism for a bit?
That was it's hard to remember now. I think there were a couple of factors. I was sent, it's weird, I was sent the advert for the job it was before the internet, so I was sent the advert for the job in the post by my best friend. He was living in London.
The post, wow.
In the post, she cut it out of a newspaper and stuck it to her letter and said, "This sounds like you."
That's amazing.
I think it was from Draper's Record. I know, I loved it. And I thought, it does actually sound quite like me. And at the time I was seeing I just met Mark, who I'm with now, and he was living in London, and my best friend was in London. And I sort of thought, oh, well, maybe I should try that because I wasn't really having. So it was more. I should say from the start, most of my career is very much based on my emotional feelings about things.
Yeah,
I follow my feelings a lot. And
that's
the
great.
combination of getting that in the post and it really resonating with me, and
so it's an intuitive sort of feeling that you had.
It was an intuitive feeling. But also I had always, which I don't think my best friend knew this, but when I was a child, I always wanted to be a writer or a journalist.
Did you?
So
wow.
it was when I was 15 and making my choices about college, it was between those two things. So for me, it was like, oh, maybe I can do that. I'm going to try it. And
Fantastic.
I did try it and I got the job. So it was it was all good.
That's so cool. And did you have experience, or were you just like, I'm just going to blag it kind of thing?
Yeah, I blagged it. I think
I love that.
I blagged it, but I did have, so what I did have was I lived abroad and I spoke French and Italian.
Handy.
And I speak, so it was very handy because a big part of the job was travelling to trade fairs and interviewing people.
Fantastic.
And so they felt, I think they felt that, well, it was a very small magazine set up, and the guy who interviewed me, Stephen, he was a lovely guy. And he was an unusual guy, but I think he enjoyed having people work for him who didn't have experience, and we did need to be more textile knowledgeable than we did journalists, because he was a journalist, so he did the editing, and he didn't worry too much about the writing. It was more of a visual and a knowledge of fabric and how it works. It was about weaving as well and stuff like that.
Right,
so
fantastic.
Yeah, so it
sounds great.
It was. I mean, yeah, it was amazing. I got to travel so much to the point now that I don't really need to travel anymore.
You've done it all. You've ticked it all off.
I did go quite a few places. I mean, obviously I went back and forth to the same places quite a lot as well, but because trade fairs go round and round, it was a 6-monthly thing. But yeah, I got to do some unusual things. I got to do some unusual things then, but I didn't put my designs on.
And what kind of unusual things have you talking?
Well, no, I was sent to Taiwan to be a judge of a fashion show, and I was only there 3 days, and then I came back and had to go to Florence. And actually, there were other things. It was just it was a very unusual place to work, and the guy who ran it, there were unusual situations we were in where we'd be sent to embassies. I went to the Swedish embassy for some party because no one else could go, so I went. And
for
me it was unusual. For me it was all unusual. I'm what I would consider I was a working class kid, and then to be thrown into these fairly
parties.
Big scale parties, like in Florence, going to
fancy
things
and things like
Well, yeah, but I was winging that as well, so it was all very amusing at the time.
I love that. I love that you've flagged all these things and because I think that's kind of part of being an artist, isn't it? We kind of have to say yes and then figure out how to do it afterwards.
I think so. And I definitely had the imposter syndrome thing. I definitely had that in that job, possibly more than I've ever had anywhere else.
Wow.
And the few weeks in, I thought I was going to leave because I couldn't get my head around it. But again, it is that thing you have to, it's that challenge that you give yourself. You need it sometimes, and you can overcome it. Yeah, absolutely. And everyone said to me, fake it. And I did. and it carried on. I faked it in my own way because I'm not, I can't really pretend all the time, I'm not being something else.
What was your own way? What was your kind of way of doing it, do you think?
I just, I asked a lot of questions.
Right.
And, that's always key, I think. If you're not sure, don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
I just asked, and I chatted to Stephen, who was an incredibly posh older man. I mean, he was in his late 60s then, and, incredibly wealthy. The people that ran it were incredibly wealthy as well.
Okay.
The building was just amazing where we worked in Holborn, Bloomsbury Square sort of area, and it was just but I just didn't. I tried to overcome my fears and relax and just be me, and I was just me. And if I didn't understand it, I asked, and if he wouldn't tell me, I'd ask someone else.
That's it. Yeah.
Again, you find your people in there, and there are other people
making friends,
also like me, so it's fun. Yeah.
Yes. Making friends
I
and kind
think,
of like making those connections is so important, isn't it? I
yes,
think.
and that is the key to the whole thing. I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
to have those connections, to be yourself in them, and just be with, but get to know people, and
Yeah.
then and see where that goes and what that,
Yeah.
and try things again.
Yeah.
If you don't, if something doesn't work out, then maybe there's something else. Don't, you
Yeah.
know,
Or maybe that will lead to something else. You never know.
yeah,
Your path kind of can go like that.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
so after this, so you were a
Mm.
journalist for a bit. So then you went back to doing design and
Design, yeah,
illustration and pattern design and things like that. So
yeah.
how did you? So you made that move by finding a job. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. I
So
found a place in a studio, a design studio.
fantastic.
Yeah.
But how did you start all of this originally? Was it kind of from uni? You went. Did you do art at uni, or did
I
you
did.
go?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did. At the beginning, I didn't do A levels. I did a prelim course to work out what sort of art I wanted to do.
Oh, the art
led,
foundation thing. Is that
like a
the
foundation. It was
Okay.
more because it was younger. It was when you come out of school. So I was 16, and I didn't
Right,
want to
okay.
stay in school, and I didn't know
Yeah.
what A levels I wanted to do. And I heard
Fair
about this
enough.
course locally.
That sounds cool.
In Worthing. It was really cool. It's one of the best things I could have done, really, because you get to
Yeah.
try woodwork,
Yeah.
ceramics, photography, but in a very relaxed way. I mean, it was so fine arty. We were doing, again, unusual things, but really good things to try at that age, because it just opens up your mind to things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the tutors were really, good at giving you feedback and helping you. And they pushed me towards doing the textiles BTEC that I did after that, which was 2 years. And then I wanted to do a degree in textiles. But I wanted to do embroidery, but I didn't have enough embroidery in my portfolio, I now realise. But again, following my gut, I still applied, but I didn't get in anywhere. So I took a year out and I did embroidery in a factory in Littlehampton instead.
Fantastic.
Which is a bit weird. But
I love it. It's cool.
I didn't give up, and I carried on doing life drawing, and I carried on it while I was working full time. And then I applied again, and I got into York on an HND fashion course.
Right.
Because at that time, when I was 19, I was incredibly self-conscious, and I think it was also my work was possibly lacking as well. But I know for a fact that in my interviews, I shut down, so I couldn't respond. Right. I was too.
That's so hard, isn't it? Because if you've got that anxiety and you shut down, and as we were just saying about kind of making those connections and making friends, and that's how you kind of move forward through through this life and take these chances. And if you're shutting down, it's so hard. And I think
so. And I think when something. I think so, and when something's so important to you, I mean, it was so important
and you
to me
build
by
it up
then.
inside you, and
It was such a huge thing. I needed to leave where I lived. I needed to get out, and I needed to do it, and I couldn't. The pressure of doing it was so huge that I couldn't speak. And again, it's possibly the work as well, but it is true that if you can talk about your work and talk about you to others and give your own, like I'm doing now, it makes so much difference to how people relate to you and what they see. And I couldn't do that. And obviously it's not just that. People are looking, having been the other side of that in some ways since then, people are looking for, in work and in college, people want to see that you have the confidence in yourself, that they won't be there having to support you all through it, because that's a struggle then that they can't take on. That's your personality, not your work. So it was unfortunate that I was in that position, but lucky that I got a place in York on an H&D course, which again I felt wasn't right for me, and I tried to, I'm very stubborn, even though I'm self-conscious. I'm very stubborn, and I tried again. 3 months later, I applied for transfer, and I got into Brighton University to do fashion and textiles, which is where I needed to be. Yes. that was the right place for me.
That's great. You had that sense that you could do that, and you kind of pushed for that. That's amazing, because I think a lot of people when they're that young, I think a lot of my friends did degrees that they weren't maybe totally enamored with, but they just thought, oh, I need a degree, I'm just going to carry on with this one, and then I've got a degree and then I can go and get a job kind of thing. But it sounds a bit more like you really had this intuitive feeling of what you needed to do, and kind of a bit how you needed to get there, which is really amazing at such a young age, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I didn't have a lot of support. My family weren't supporting me, so it was all down to me. And I think, they weren't I mean, they certainly weren't financially supporting me, because they didn't have the money to support me through that. But my mum didn't want me to go to art college, so although she wasn't actively against it, she was actively against it.
I think a lot of parents are, aren't they?
Yes, but she had seen by then, initially she was really against it, by then, sort of 3 or 4 years down the line, she'd seen that I wasn't going to give up and that I definitely was trying. But
just get behind it, Mum. You've got
to go with it. And I think in that, I'd worked it out because I had to work it out for myself. I didn't really have a sort of older person giving me advice. I only had my friends supporting me and helping me. And I kind of always think that if you don't try, you don't know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that is always how I approach things. If I'm comfortable with what I'm thinking of trying, and again, if I'm not comfortable with it, then I won't try it. So even if it might seem like the right thing to do, I'm not going to try that. But if it's something that I really think, right, this makes sense, then
you will push it.
Again, it can go wrong. It could have been awful. I could have hated Brighton, and then it would have been
how would you
really
hate
tough.
Brighton?
Well, I knew, but again, I think also I realised that all the places I'd applied for before and that time, the second time I applied, were all in the north and in Scotland, because I wanted to get as far away from Littlehampton as possible. But in going to York, I realised that actually that wasn't right for me either. So it was, I knew Brighton, I had friends in Brighton, and I knew that actually, so those 3 months in being in York, which I did love and I made friends, but I felt like, no, actually I learned something quite quickly. Right. So again,
a bit off there,
Yeah, and I knew I loved Brighton, so I was like, as far as the place was concerned, it would be good. And the course was amazing, so.
Fantastic. So you had a great time there, and then you kind of, I guess you made, did you get a job straight out after uni? Or what happened then?
Well, so it's an interesting course there, because I don't think they do it now. I haven't looked, I should have looked maybe, before we spoke. But there used to be it was a 4-year course, and you have a year work experience.
Wow, that's amazing.
So you go out into the industry, and I did work experience in Hungary, in Lyon, and in London. And London,
amazing.
It was amazing, and I absolutely loved it. And I wanted to travel so badly, and it was such a good way for me to do it. It was just incredible.
And was that subsidised by the uni, or was it kind of you had to fund all that?
No, it was all I mean, I think it was actually all subsidised, thinking about it. Lyon, it was paid by the company that I worked for. Right. And then the rest was subsidised, like the travel and my rent.
That's so cool.
But the Hungary was I think it was part of either Tempus or Erasmus, so that doesn't exist anymore, sadly, because of Brexit. But it's an exchange programme, and I was a student at the university in Budapest. And then people came back. I was with someone else as well, and there was a Finnish lady and someone else. We were all doing a swap. So the people came back to our university. So that was more of a study thing. Yeah.
Right.
And then I studied indigo printing. And then, And
that's indigo. Is that a specialist thing?
It is, and it's a traditional folk art that Hungary has a lot of. And I went to stay with family, and that do it
Wow.
on their farm, and it was just incredible.
That sounds cool.
And I wrote my thesis. I had to write my thesis on it, which I was a bit annoyed about because that wasn't what I wanted to write my thesis on.
Oh.
But in the end, because I didn't realise quite that was the case when I agreed to go. But in the end, I was like, no, it is fascinating, and I did really enjoy writing about it. And I had so much material because obviously I had a personal experience of it. But yeah, block printing and indigo dyeing, and it was incredible. And it's such an old craft. But,
is it?
Yeah. So it's
So
all
I don't
blocks,
know anything
wax.
about it.
No, it's all fabric. So it's all, they use wax to block print the patterns, and then they indigo dye it. It's all natural dyes, and in vast vats of things.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff, and the patterns some have meaning, some don't, and it's just beautiful. But yeah, so doing those jobs, I then had contacts. The job I did in London offered me a job when I left. A year later, offered me work, but I didn't want to go to London. It was fantastic, but I didn't want to go to London.
I was like, yay!
Yay! No, so
what was the reason? What was the reason you didn't want to go to London then?
I've never really liked huge cities. I was never intrigued by London that much. I like going there, but I didn't really want to
visit, but not really. Yeah, it is a very big place, isn't it? It's very every single part of it is quite different, but the main kind of feeling I get when I go there is just this overwhelm and just too much and too busy and too loud, and
it's overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you lived there? Have you?
I haven't. My mum used to work there, and whenever I used to go to see her at work, I just used to be like, why are you here?
Yeah.
So I never had the feeling, the impetus to want to go and move there either. Have exactly the same experience as you. I didn't want to.
Working there, I felt overwhelmed by it because obviously I did a 3-month placement with this company. I also hadn't made a good connection with the people who ran the company. Having worked in Lyon with a lovely studio, where I got on really well with everyone, it felt a little bit less, friendly. If the whole experience wasn't friendly for me. So, living in London wouldn't have been easy, and doing that. So I possibly foolishly said no. And carried on working in the bar I was working in. And then,
brilliant. Which bar was that? Is it still there?
I was going to say, I think it is. It's the Irish pub off of. It's round the back from. I live
West
Street.
Corner. Not West.
No, it's a small one. What's it called?
Oh, there's a Bugle
It's not
in
there.
Is
the
it
Bugle Inn. It's the Bugle
still
Inn.
there. Still there.
It's still there. Oh
Yeah.
wow, it's lovely in there. I mean,
I don't think I've ever been. I'm not sure if
Well,
I've
no,
been to
it's
that
set
pub.
off the road, and it really was a sort of local pub then.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like 94 by then. We're in that time zone.
Mid kind of Nirvana and that kind of grungy type stuff.
Well, I was very into Nirvana, so I'd already got over Nirvana by that point.
All right. Old news.
I saw them when they first came. I was really into that sort of thing. So yes, it was full on.
Grungy
and in fact,
type time.
My whole
DMs.
I was in my DMs and my dungarees for most of my degree because I'd either be in a man's suit because I was always wearing men's suits and men's waistcoats. And
brilliant.
Yeah, I was very.
I do remember the waistcoats in the 90s. Everyone, those kind of fun, those patterns sort of, those patterns sort of look like old carpet kind of.
Yes, there was that.
Do you know what I mean? And they had black at the back.
Yeah, I was in the men's suit, so I'd buy because I couldn't afford clothes, so I'd buy charity shop clothing, and so I was doing that when I started in 1991 because I'd already I saw Nirvana in 89 or 9, so I was really into Sonic Youth and all of that music, and really into going to gigs, which is the other reason why I love Brighton and didn't want to because
absolutely it's a great place.
So yeah, I was already looking very grungy when I turned up, and by the time I left, because it had become fashion, everyone was doing it, but they'd all spent like hundreds of pounds on it.
You were like, what are you doing?
Why are you wearing those
just go to the charity shop.
Yeah, I'm just
Brilliant.
A charity shop again.
Yeah.
I was always in dungarees. I have the same dungarees now that I still like to print in, that I kept, that I got in Hungary actually. Well, no, I got a pair in Brighton.
So you've still got them. You've still got the
I
ones.
still got them because I love them to bits, and they still fit me, and I wear them. But they were old ones, and I took them to Hungary, and I had them re-dyed there in the indigo vat when I was on the farm.
Brilliant.
So they're a bit bluer now, but they're covered in printing ink.
You'll have to show them to me sometime.
Yes, I'll wear them. No, I won't. I don't wear them out anymore. But I used to wear them everywhere. I used to wear everything just because also when you're printing all the time, you can't really dress up. It's pointless.
Yeah,
so
you just make a mess all over you.
Oh, it was a mess. I was just a mess. Yeah, a bit like my studio is now. But yeah,
no, studio's fine. So you're working in this pub.
Yeah.
And how long were you there for? And what happened?
I was there probably, it's hard to remember exactly, but I think I was probably there about 3 months. And then my friend Zoe came in, who'd done the course with me, and she came for a drink, and she said, I've got this idea. I've been approached by this company. She was a weaver, and she'd done a trade fair in Germany as part of an award she'd won through the university.
Okay.
So we graduated together, and her, while she was doing that, she was approached by an Italian company to go over there and weave for them for an internship for a few months. Wow. Paid internship.
Fantastic. But it was
fantastic. Yeah, really fantastic. Well, paid as in they provide you, it wasn't paid, it was you provided with everything you needed. Within reason. You weren't given a load of accommodation, food, and some spending money. So it wasn't a wage thing. It was fantastic, and the lucky thing was that she needed to bring, again, it's about friendship, she needed to take a printer with her as someone who specialised in print.
Nice.
And she wanted me to go with her.
Because you were mates, and it would have been
because we were mates, and it was going to be a laugh. And so I said, yes, I'm coming with you in the pub, because I was behind the bar when she finished. Okay, I'll come. When are we leaving? Yeah. And we left a month later. But we didn't know how long it was going to be. We thought it was 3 months, but it was extended to 6 months when we got there. Wow. So I came back at Christmas. And basically moved everything over to Italy gradually. And it was amazing. The company's Vizino, they're still around, but they don't have a print department anymore, unfortunately, because at that point, industry was still quite focused in Europe, as in creation, but then it moved to China, so the competition factor got in the way of them staying as a printing company. But they're a very high-end weave company, so their woven fabrics are still used by Prada and everyone, like all the big names. Wow. And at the time,
and what were you doing there? So you were doing like print. Were you creating new things for them, or you were experimenting basically?
It was amazing. They basically, so there were 2 factors that went on. There was me. It turned out there was someone else they'd approached as well from Scotland called Jan, who was lovely, and she was another weaver. So her and Zoe were in the weave department in another building in another village. I was in the print department, which was a huge print factory. Just me and all these printing men, and it was fine. They were so lovely, and I got given a big printing table and any fabric, because obviously it's a fabric company, so I could have any of the fabrics I wanted, and I could paint on that. They didn't have anywhere artistic, any studio or anything for me to work in, so I had to do it there. But basically, the guy who ran it was very, very part of it, so he wasn't sort of removed from it, and he'd visit, and he loved paint. He was really into art, and he really loved seeing. He watched me paint, and he wanted me to just paint anything, and they tried it and turn them into patterns, and so really a lot.
So you're just painting direct. So you're painting
directly onto swatches of fabric, onto the print table. Yeah, I'm just messing around with experimenting with the Devore.
And that's what you did.
So I just did pieces like that, and then turned them into patterns, and they turned them into things. But that isn't all I did. So when I was there, because the woman I was working with was pregnant, Cinzia, she was so lovely to me, and so there was one woman. It was me and her in the factory. Other than the weaving people who were in the other bit, they were mainly women, but the print department was mainly men. And it was me and her. And she spoke good English, and I helped her with her job as well, which was all the production side of things. So the ordering of the lengths of original fabrics they needed to print on if they weren't weaving them themselves, and orders for the printing. So all of that. And because I was picking up Italian, because I spoke French already, and I was beginning to speak Italian also because I was on my own so much, whereas the other two weren't. I had to chat, and they were chatting to me. So when she was leaving, I'd been there 6 months by then, and we were all going to leave, and she was about to go on maternity leave. She was the print manager, so they offered me her job because they didn't have anyone else who understood the process. Fantastic. And they did do it. I said yes. And it was all under so again, it wasn't quite illegal. That was the only thing. So that was, I wasn't fully, I don't know whether I should say it, maybe cut it now.
I don't think they're going to come after you.
They're not going to come after me. No. I don't think I had to have a visa. It was just that they weren't doing it PAYE, so they weren't paying tax.
So they were just giving you cash?
Giving me cash. I got a wad of cash every year.
Good old cash.
It's very nice. I know, I was enjoying that. And and I stayed. So I stayed there for a while. But
how long did you stay then?
My friends went home because they didn't have jobs for them, and I felt really bad. And but they did understand. I mean, it wasn't. I stayed in that job for for a year and a half. Cinzia came back to her job, and they kept me a little bit, but they felt they couldn't. They gave me a day notice because they couldn't keep me on. That was a bit of a shocker.
That's a bit harsh.
Yeah, that was a bit harsh, but I managed due to my extreme survival skills.
I stayed. I'm just in awe of this whole story. Is fantastic.
You can tell me, am I going into too much? Because I don't have to tell you all
this is great. This is great. I'm loving it.
It's not career though, is it? It's not really about what folks
well, it is. It's about your journey, and I think people.
It's a very erratic journey.
But I think everyone's is a bit, and I think it's really great for people to see kind of all of these kind of opportunities that you've kind of grabbed and just gone along with, because that is so important to be able to do that. And from the person that you were as well, where you said you were struggling in that interview to kind of talk, to going to Italy and being a print manager. I don't
struggle with that though. That is my weird thing. I didn't have that struggle. It's strange. Right. I don't have a one-to-one struggle. I have it in that sense. Yeah. And also, I suppose it was it wasn't based on any judgment. I think that was why Renato, my boss, because he met Jan and Zoe and he picked them to go there. Yeah. I was an unknown, so he did want to come and see what I was doing, obviously, because he was investing in someone he'd never met before. And I think if that hadn't gone well, that would have been awful. I wouldn't, obviously. But luckily, I mean, we got on, and also, it worked out that he did like what I did. So, it's all luck, though, isn't it? Really, a lot of the time.
I don't think it is. I think it's kind of part. Obviously, it's part luck, but you're kind of making these decisions. You said yes to your mate. Yes. You made friends with your mate. You went to the uni to do that. You changed courses to go on that course. There's all these little decisions that you're making that kind of lead to these things as well. So. Yeah, I think, and also you were talking earlier about kind of this intuitive sense that you have, which I think is really, I think a lot of us we dismiss that quite often, and we should be paying a bit more attention to it, really. Yeah. You kind of, these things, and then you take them up into your head, and then you battle with them. You're like, oh no, I don't want to do that. I shouldn't do that. Yes. Blah, blah, blah. Whereas you should just be like, oh, okay, this is kind of a really strong feeling that I have that I should be doing this. I'll just do it, kind of thing. It's going to be, it might be difficult, but let's go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I do think that is what I've done. It's really gone with my feelings more. And again, that might be because there was no one really. I mean, don't get me wrong, my mum was in my life, but there was no one really giving me full-on direction. I wasn't, no one was saying to me at that point, oh God, what are you doing? I didn't have anyone sort of either negatively saying anything or positively saying it. And so I was just
so it was kind of good in a way
to do what I felt was right. Yeah. And financially, I mean, I wasn't. I wasn't secure financially when I said no to the
Yeah.
job in London. So again, that wasn't
Yeah.
a great move, but it was the right move for me at the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, you might have been really miserable in that job,
I
and
felt I would have been, yeah.
that might have put you off doing any kind
What I
of
love, yeah.
artistic things in the future. You know, that could
Yeah.
have stopped you dead, and that's so it's important in the way that you did say no.
Yeah.
So after,
and I
so
didn't
after
have
this,
a plan.
Yeah.
Like, you know.
Sometimes we
So,
don't
yeah.
for a bit, do we?
No. Exactly.
And that's fine
So, yes.
too.
Yes.
So after this Italian company said, right, one more day, off you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you were like,
Well, by then I had moved over properly, and I had a flat I shared with another Cinzia, another friend of mine. And I was a bit shocked, and I was like, oh, right, I've got to find a job. So luckily I knew people by then, and I was living in Turin, so I wasn't in the village where the factory was, or I could, again, my instincts had said to me, don't live there, because I was living in the factory at one point as well. But although that was free, it was awful. I mean, it wasn't pleasant accommodation. No. And I felt that, no, I needed to be where I could meet people and go out. I was going out quite a lot then. It was like, no, even though it was a bus ride and a 6 a.m. start every day, I thought, no, I can do that. I'm going to do that. So by then I knew people in Turin, and I just asked people straight. I always ask people, and I forget myself that that's good advice.
Yeah.
But when in doubt, ask your friends. Let them know you're in trouble, or let them know. And luckily people said to me, oh, you know, because I had friends in doing different jobs, not just designer friends. And they said, oh, there's a school looking for teachers, go there. And the next day I walked into a teaching job. So I got a teaching job. Well, because then, again, the 90s were a different thing.
It's a different time. What's it called? What's it called?
Didn't need a qualification. No, you did.
The checks that they do, the police checks.
Oh, DBS. Oh no, I didn't get DBS.
That's it.
No,
didn't have to do that.
No. I walked into a school. They said, "Oh, all right," but it wasn't children. It was adults. Again, it was slightly different.
Okay,
but,
so that makes
It was business English, and because I'd got a low level in English, and I was kind of all right. I mean, I was. The thing was, you just had to. I didn't have to have any qualification. I just had to be able to speak fluent English, and I could do that. So yes, and then from there, I had some security, and I started to look for work and look for design work, and I weirdly freelanced for the company I'd been working for a little bit as a designer, no longer as their production manager, but so I freelanced a little bit for them. I found a few other freelance jobs. I did some odd murals in places, and took whatever artistic work I could find around teaching. But I taught for about a year, so I was teaching for about a year because I didn't want to go home. I loved Italy and I loved being there, and I wanted to stay. So I just stubbornly stayed and thought, I'll just keep trying. And I tried for a job at a couple of companies, and I applied. When I first applied, my Italian probably wasn't as good, and I applied to somewhere called Mirolio, which is a place outside Turin in Alba, which is where it's just a tiny village, but it's got a lot of factories there. And I applied for it once and didn't get in, and then a year later I applied again, and I did get that job. So that's when I got back into proper working, and at the time they were the biggest print and fabric production factory in Europe, so they were a really good place to work, and that's why I kept trying. Again, I did keep trying, and I thought that's where I've got to go, because that's where I need to be, and I got that job. So,
Fantastic.
I did do it.
Well done.
So it was good, and I stayed there for a little bit, and then I was a colourist, so again it was a different job too, so it wasn't quite the same.
So what's that? What does that involve then?
That involves, I don't know if it exists anymore, so I'm not sure, but what it was that as a printer, as a department, we were the print department, a design department, and we were part of choosing the designs for the season, so every 6 month season, and then we were the people that once we bought the designs from studios, So I wasn't designing anything from scratch.
Okay.
We were then putting collections together and colouring them. So we were given huge books of colour samples on little fabric chips that came from the print department, that were all the colours they could provide, and they were all numbered, so they all knew. It's all like a system that worked, so that you picked the colours on these chips and you put them together to make the prints work in various colourways. And then they would swatch those, and if they were approved, they then go forward to sell. So it's all very corporate, but it was still quite a good job. It sounds a bit boring, but it was quite a lot of fun.
No, it sounds cool. So you get to pick the colours for the patterns, and then someone says yes or no.
Because usually a print pattern is like 6 to 8 colours, and if the floral work, colour makes all the difference really. If you get the balance right, it's quite a nuanced thing, and if you get it all right,
it can take you forever as well to kind of get to figure
it can,
that out,
but again, we didn't have. I mean, we were doing a lot in the day. We were doing a lot of things and going backwards and forwards to the print department to liaise with it. So, unfortunately for me, one of those swatches was sent out. I don't know if I'd approved it or not, but it was sent out with where the print, because they were printed on cylinders, but sometimes on screens. For the swatches, they were done on screens before they were put on cylinders, and the print had offset, so the ground was showing, so there was white around the floral that wasn't part of the colourway. Does that make sense? So when you print layers, sometimes there's a possibility that there's a shift, and then the white of the original fabric doesn't get covered in colour and shows through.
Right.
So you have a white
so
outline.
there's a gap basically, or something like that.
It's like it's gone. So there's a gap, and no one thought to. So somehow it slipped through everyone's fingers.
But I think there's the thing in this. So when I've been working, I've found sometimes there's this kind of blame culture, and I think that's really unhealthy. I think because we should all be thinking of it like we're all working towards this goal. Yes. It doesn't matter if someone's made a mistake. It's just more like, how can we fix this? How can we make this better? How can this not happen next time? Rather than you did something wrong.
But I think they found a solution with the client that worked for everyone. And also I think it made everyone be a bit more on their toes after that. Because everyone else was going to Premier Vision, which is in Paris, with all the collections. And again, I was one of the junior designers, although I wasn't that young. So
what's Premier Vision? Is it like a show or something?
That's the biggest textile trade fair in Paris. Yeah,
so I don't know this well, so you're going to have to... No, it's fine.
No, it still goes on. And if anyone is wanting to know about textiles and doesn't know that, then go there and go round. It's also really good for contacts.
And chat to people
chat to people. Okay. It's got, so all the fabric creators go there, like factories go there to sell their fabrics, but there's also a huge area that's just design, where the studios are, because all the fabric factories are there. They go and buy their designs while they're there, but also the studios are there. So if you're a designer looking for work, it could be a good place to meet people.
So would you kind of go? You could go with your portfolio or something like that, and
I think you could. People. I think it depends on how well you manage that, but definitely is something I've done at other trade fairs where you go. You either can try and make an appointment beforehand, or you can go with maybe a book portfolio and
a little kind of thing or something like that.
Yeah. And business cards, and then you can approach people when they're quiet, because obviously you don't want to disturb the business that's going on.
No, you don't.
But I mean, they will. I mean, some of in the design section, I think they're more. You can approach studios more. In the fabric area, so most of the stands, they're huge. Some of them are huge, like the one Marolio's was just ginormous, and they won't let people on unless they know who you are. So you won't get access that easily to that, but you can still see the trends, and some of the smaller ones will chat to you, and you can just chat to people in the bar. I mean that's again,
you've got to hang around the right areas and make friends. Basically, that's it, isn't it?
But it's Premier Vision for trends and for knowledge of fabric and design is as far as I know, it is still the best trade fair. There's lots of them now. But that has been around for years, and it will never really stop, I don't think, being the central. It's commercial, but it's also high-end. I mean, you get everything there, And for design connections, if you're looking for a studio, even if you're not going to approach them there, it's good to look who's there and see what their stands are like and what they're doing.
It's all about like knowledge and figuring out who's who and all that kind of stuff,
and that's like a
understanding that world and
yes, and that is a fast track to that. I think for me
Right.
that would be where you go if you can get to Paris. Go there because London doesn't really have that equivalent. It does have a textile show twice a year.
Right.
These are twice a year shows as well. Trade fairs tend to be, but it's not on the same scale. I haven't been recently, so maybe it's got better. But that's at the Business Design Centre in Islington. It used to be, but I can't remember what it's called.
And are they all in like
things like that?
Are they all in like a specific season? You know, like you've got fashion weeks and things like that. They all in a certain sort of time frame.
So they are normally January, February time, or probably about now. So it's every 6 days. Yeah, so it's probably about July, August.
Okay.
I can't remember when. I can look it up and tell you when Premier Vision was.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, they're all about then because you're buying for the season ahead. So when you're in the winter, you're selling summer, and when you're in the summer, you're selling winter, and you're doing it for the year.
Yeah,
so most designs, I've just done spring summer 25.
Okay, that's weird, isn't it, to go that far ahead?
Yeah, although again that is a bit weird because I'm doing that in the summer, but that's because my company that I'm working for at the moment is ahead. So normally I'd be doing.
And you've got to.
Autumn winter 24 I think is the right time for me to be working on now. I lose track a bit because everyone works differently now, but because there is a more of a I'm going into the thing of but fashion has also become more trans-seasonal. So trend wise, although there are still the catwalk, because the catwalks lead it all, so there's still the seasonal like catwalks coming up now. I think Paris Fashion Week's on now when it's, but there's that is all seasonal, but there's still a lot more. No, it's hard to. That again, that's part of why I went into kids wear because I couldn't keep up with it anymore.
There's lots going on.
Yeah, but it is. But kids wear still has seasonal stuff as well. Yeah, and it is keeping on top of those things is more easy now because of the internet. You can still get that information so much easier, and even just going to the websites of Premier Vision or. There's some really good. There's Filati in Florence. That's a really good trade fair for woven fabrics, and
fantastic.
There's loads of things out there that if you want to find companies to approach or want to know more about the industry, they're the places to look. Really.
Maybe I could get you to write a bit of a list, could I?
will.
And then I can
give a few
just grab that off you and give it. Have it somewhere downloadable. I'll put it in so that people can go to these places. That'd be really cool if that's okay.
Yeah.
So after this, did you stay in Italy after this company, or did you go back to England?
I stayed there until 1998 when I felt my time there had come. I was missing designing again. I was still designing for myself, but I was really missing actually designing. And I came back to Brighton because I was also not in the best place I could have been for myself. And I just learnt to drive there because they needed me to drive to the print department, so they got my licence through. Cool. Slightly cheeky way. And I could drive, but I couldn't drive as well as if I passed my test here. I probably wouldn't have passed my test here. So I came home and I just thought, I'm going to work out what I'm going to do and just sort of have a little breather because I felt I'd been on a bit of a... it was 4 years in Italy and I'd had 4 years in my degree, and I felt like, I needed a bit of being at home, a bit of sorting myself out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I sort of did. Again, I went for what I felt I needed at the time. I didn't want to be ambitious at that point. I got a part-time job in Kukai in Brighton, and I got a place at my friend's
flat. In what,
flat.
sorry?
Kukai, the fashion, it's not there anymore. It's a French brand. It's like clothing.
Okay.
It's a bit like Ted Baker, but a bit cheaper.
Okay.
Yeah, that sort of thing. And I worked there part time, and I found an agent, so I started freelancing.
Right. So I wanted to ask you about agents. So how? Yes. So is it important in your industry to kind of have an agent? Do you think?
I do think so. I think. Yeah. Well, it depends on where you are in your career. I think when you're starting, if you come out of uni or college or wherever you find your education, if you're beginning, having an agent that is on your side and that you can communicate well with is really good, because it will push you. They will push you. They will feed you information, and through that, hopefully, you sell and you make money. You might not always. That's the drawback, is that you don't always get. You're obviously working sometimes for nothing, but if you find the right
when are you
one,
working for nothing? When you
then you're not.
You make
there? So you're normally asked to make a minimum. You know, they give you their minimums. It all varies of what they want a month in terms of designs that you send to them. But then they take them around the studio, around the factories and the brands, and sell them. But if you don't sell them, you don't make any commission. The other drawback is they're taking like 40%. If they're taking more than that, that's not very good.
Go away.
Yeah, go away. The lower the percentage, the better.
Obviously,
yeah. So I think for young designers, it can be such a good thing to do. It definitely has been something that's helped me. I don't have one now, though.
Okay. And what would be your advice to kind of try and find one? What would they have? What would people do? Would they send in examples, or do you think it's worth sending proper things through the post, or trying to arrange meetings with these people? What would you think would be the best way?
I think, looking online is good for when there's openings in studios, because they often advertise. So they advertise on LinkedIn. If you can get a thing set up for emails where you'll get notifications of opportunities, then you might see something there. Find studios, because they're usually studios, so it's the same people that go to Premier Vision. So if you find studios either through the internet or by going places or through people you know, or your university as well should give you some help with that.
Some help,
sometimes they don't always. But if you have a list of people that you'd like to work for, whether it is a studio or whether you want to work in-house for a brand, which I've also done, I think the thing is to either email them and send a PDF with ideas of your work, or, like you say, sending things in the post is often a winner. I think nowadays even more so.
Absolutely, because people don't bother, do they? And it's just everyone who kind of, working in an office, and they're kind of doing through emails, and then you get this cool thing in the post, and you're looking through like some. I know it's probably a bit less environmentally friendly with printing and things like that, but if you're not sending out thousands and thousands, it's just a few to your favourite ones. I think that's good. Kind of a bit worth that extra push effort, to kind of do that. And then you can call up and be like, hi, just checking you received it.
Yes,
kind of thing,
and that's the thing, is following up from it is really good. And selecting, so making sure if you're approaching a studio or a brand or a factory, like I worked in, whatever it is, or a publisher, if that's the way you're going with illustration, look at their output and ensure that you really feel that you can work. They can work with you. It's the being aligned. You don't have to be the same, obviously. They don't. No one's going to look for someone doing exactly what they've already got, but you need to have some feeling that you're going to gel with them on a level or not.
Not kind of completely different, completely out there on a. It's got to have some sort of similarities in a subtle way, a kind of a feeling, I suppose.
A feeling, an affinity that you've got, a design aesthetic that's somewhere meeting. There are some studios that only have hand painted for textiles. They only have hand painters. Again, it's different now because it's not just textiles. So all studios seem to. Some do just do but it's all surface design, which is not what it was when I was doing everything that I've just told you about. We were textile. I was a textile designer. But now, because digital printing exists, it can go across anything. So
you
it's
can print on literally
design.
anything, can't you?
But again, some studios specialise in hand painters and hand artists who will still use digital things to create patterns, but it all comes from a watercolour or a painting. Whereas other studios are more digital and more illustrator, and their aesthetic is more of a flat graphic look or a and again, it's the same with brands and what you're going for. If you find a brand you really love, tailor your approach to that brand. Just
As a random random tangent question, just with, because we were just talking about styles there. Would you suggest if someone liked to work maybe in 2 or 3 different styles, that they have completely separate websites for those separate styles or separate identities, or you would say put them all together?
I have been struggling with this myself for quite a while.
It's always a struggle.
It is really a struggle. But
you don't want to confuse people. I think that's the thing. I think people are quite... These people who you're sending stuff to are quite busy, aren't they? And they're kind of... They just want to see things quickly. Oh, yes,
simple.
you do this. You do this. You do... Oh, this person does this. This person does this. And they want to pigeonhole you, even though, you know, as artists, we often... We work in lots of different styles. We can do lots of different things. And it's sort of... It's a bit that thing, you know, in marketing, I think, where if a confused customer will never buy. I don't know if you've heard that.
Yes, no, it's
but
true.
I feel like I feel a bit like a confused, you know, creative director or whoever will not go for you.
Yes, if you're not.
Do you think that's?
Message.
Do you think that's?
I think that is true, and I think
you do need clarity in some way.
I think there's. So for me, yes, I think you do need to have clarity when you're approaching for a job. You do need to send something that clearly says this is what I'm doing. I think that there are ways that you can do that where you're having separate websites is something I'm considering, but again, is not something I think is necessarily. I don't know. I'm basically in 2 minds myself. That's the problem.
I think this is the thing.
I had a mentoring session with a studio not a few years ago when I was just beginning to do art, which is what I'm moving into now. Yeah. And I asked her what she thought, because in my head, I wanted to keep everything separate at that point. But she was saying that's not... I don't think you're giving people the benefit of seeing what else you can provide by doing that and having one. And she's quite a major studio.
Right. Okay.
Or at the same age as me, giving me advice. And I sort of thought, well, no, you're right in some ways, because you're then sort of shutting down what someone might see somewhere in something else that you can do. It's
very true. Yeah.
And
it's tricky, isn't it? It's
a
really
is tricky
question.
And I've got work off the back of things that aren't things that I thought were meant for. So again,
interesting.
Yeah, but being editorial is important.
Yeah,
I think not.
Yes, absolutely.
The one thing I see, because I mentor people as well, now and again for free, just to help people out. One of the biggest things I see is that people throw everything. I mean, even when you haven't got a lot of work. Don't put everything out there. Even if you've only got 10 pieces, be selective. Don't throw it all. And it's something I forget as well. We all do it. We all think, I'm going to put it all in. But you can't. Sometimes it just doesn't help you to put the things in that aren't as good as the other things. Make sure.
And I think make more of things as well. You can make up a project, can't you? You can be like, oh, look. And there's so many, I think, with, you know, you were saying about surface design, you can even mock up stuff in Photoshop, can't you?
And that's
to be
very
on
key.
different surfaces, different things, and you know, there's so much. It's a lot easier now to do that than it you know used to be. You can kind of show people things.
I think if you don't do context, that, it really stands out as well nowadays. As a surface designer, I think if you don't
if you just had the print and you didn't have the mock-ups,
it looks like,
then,
well, what if you
how can I see what this looks like in different things, you know?
And going back to what you were saying before, I mean, you said, creative director. Sometimes it's not creative directors. Sometimes it is a manager who isn't necessarily a designer. So you're also showing things to people who aren't necessarily design trained, although they will have an idea. But you do need to be. That's where the clarification comes in. I think if you're making it easy for people, so make sure it's accessible. That's the main thing with the website, or PDF. I mean, that's where I was saying about PDFs. If you're sending something as a cold email to someone you've never met before, it's great to have a website portfolio, but it's also really good to tailor a PDF that you send to that person so that they know that you've thought about their brand and it's got things especially for them on that.
With
copyright protection. I don't know. I don't put my name on anything anymore, but people do that. I can't.
What you mean? Like put a watermark?
Some people
on
do watermarks. I've never done that, but I've never
done it either.
Copyright Michelle on somewhere.
You can put it on the bottom of the page.
Do you
or
not
something.
do
Just little.
Yeah.
I don't put copyright on anything.
No.
I don't. I suppose.
I tend not to worry about it.
It depends on the context, really. It depends on the context.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't tend to worry about it. Like if someone's gonna nick it, then you can usually find them. I've got a friend who has she's got a specific print that she's had taken by lots and lots of different people, and she kind of often has to sort of send them cease and desist.
Yeah.
They've used it on all sorts of things, and it's been really popular. So it's tricky to do that, but you can't just put you can't.
I
people
think
can't see it properly if you put something on. It's very distracting, isn't it? It's too much.
It doesn't look very nice.
No,
but again, if you're sending it to the right email, you're not really sending it. You're hopefully
out into everywhere.
And if they use it, then you know where they've got it from because you send them the
exactly.
it's kind of obvious that they've ripped you off. So I think that's a good way to approach people if you can't meet them in person at a trade fair or wherever you can. Yeah, I mean, don't cost.
But it's probably better.
It's not good.
Would you? But do you think it's probably better to see people in person? I feel like that kind of gives you that kind of connection that you can't get over email, and sort of that we were talking about making friends, making connections, and you can't. There's something a bit lacking in that.
Yeah,
people. It's very easy to be dismissed over email. Whereas if you go to these shows and stuff, you can.
I think it's a much easier way to do it if you can. Meeting people is a really good way. Again, it can backfire because if you're like me and you get nervous, sometimes you're not at your best. But I think most of the time, you've just got to put that down to experience and move on. But I think most of the time it's beneficial to do that. Or to know. The other thing that I say a lot to people is that, again, which is what I said at the beginning, don't forget to ask your friends if you're looking for work. Because when I've been more recently, when Mark lost his job and I was on maternity leave with James, I had to get work really fast because it was very quick. And we needed to get some money coming in. And I put on Facebook, which is mostly my friends, but also people that I've worked with. And, I said, I'm freelance again. Can anyone find me any work?
Yeah. Give me some money.
I'm having a bit of a panic.
I'll do anything.
And it works. And and it works. And it does,
Fantastic.
And I also reached out to the studio that I work for, but I didn't really want to go back to working for an agency or a studio. And I occasionally think about doing it now, and then I don't really want to do that because I'm trying to move into art more anyway, but it's that thing of agencies. I definitely think if you find a really good one, you're going to get a lot out of that. And I do like working for them, but I think for me now, most of my work comes from brands that come back to me repeatedly anyway. So because
so they're going to you directly, but would you have found them through agencies to start off with?
So the agency is very much a middleman. Agency is selling your designs or getting you commissions like I do, where people commission you to do things. You do get that through studios now, but you will never work directly with them. You'll never get given their emails because they are they're owned, as it were, by the they want to keep you away from that because that's when you start going in. They're the middleman.
They don't want you. Yeah,
they're protecting their interests. Yes, exactly, for making that connection, and they make that connection because they go into those places every 6 months, every 3 months to show work. But again,
and you couldn't do that on your own. You couldn't go in. You couldn't go in and show your work.
I've considered it. I considered a few things when I worked. So when I took the job on in Shoreditch, which was my first going back after the journalism, I worked there for a few years, and I did become their. So as well as designing, I did sales for them. So I went round all the places and took the work.
Okay, so you have that experience.
So I have the experience, and obviously I've done trade fairs through the other companies I'd worked for in Italy because I did PV with my first company I worked for in Italy. I did Premier Vision every 6 months, so I did. I've done a lot of the things that I need to have, and with the journalism, I've done a lot of trade fairs. I knew my way around all of that, so I know all the information. But the fact is that that's not who I am, and I really seriously looked at setting up as a studio, but again, I didn't feel comfortable with the 40% thing, and I couldn't. And the only way to get round that would be to be a co-op of designers, which again I discussed with other designers, but it seemed like such a complex thing.
I was gonna say.
And again, I think whilst my stubborn determination is probably my biggest value, I think the worst thing about, other than being self-conscious at times, is also that I don't work. I do work well with people, but I struggle to be partners or in business relationship. I find that I fear it a bit too much.
You like that freedom. You don't want to kind of pin yourself to someone forever, because you might want to just go. It sounds a bit like in your life that you've made many decisions where you've gone, boop, I'm going to do this now. Boop, I'm going to do this now.
Yes,
boop.
and
you want to have that free. Yeah, you want to have that freedom to that possibility that you could go, boop, I'm going to do this.
I'm going to go off and do that. And that's it. And I couldn't do that tied to a
and that would pin you down to a lot of, a lot of responsibility in a lot of people.
Very business minded. So that's also a bit of a drawback. Because I think it would take a business mind to, well, I know it does. You need to be really good at the finances to set up studios. You need to apply for funding. You need to have so for me, it all felt out of my, both not what I wanted to put my, it's also energy. Where do you want to put your energy? That's what I asked myself.
Line your ducks up for where you want to put your energy into for whatever you're doing at that moment. And that's what you have to do.
I've had ambition, and I feel I'm an ambitious person in some ways, but my ambition isn't really to be in charge of something, of other people. I like being in charge of me, but that has been my ambition, is to be freelance, to be free. So
to be free, and I've done it for a long time as well, and it's great, isn't it? Because one day you're doing this, one day you're doing that. Yeah. It's just all over the place, and
you can respond to that, and you can juggle that with the highs and the lows and all of that. And I think that I realised in looking at that, and a couple of times it's come up for me where I could go into partnership with someone, or I had a lovely friend from the magazine that I worked with who was the fashion editor. I was the textile editor, she was the fashion editor. And we talked for a long time. I mean, we really looked into it, setting up a site based on vintage trends, like all about fashion and textiles. And if we'd done it, it would the right time, because WGSN was just taking off, and it would have, I mean, WGSN had been around a while actually, but it would have been an alternative to that there wasn't at the time.
What's that? Sorry.
That's I think it stands for the Worth Global Style Network, and that is a big trend site. Again, good to look at for trends, but you pay a subscription, and companies pay for the service, and they provide colour direction every season, and we were going to do that in a more sustainable way, and also using vintage as a. So anyway, it was all this concept, and again, it would have been really good, and I loved Mel, and there was no reason not to do it other than that I suddenly felt it wasn't what I wanted to do, which was a bit sad.
Intuitive sense again. Maybe you felt again.
It's a bit of fear, I think, at that point. Again,
bit of fear sometimes, isn't it? I think it's good to sort of start to notice the differences between. Intuition.
Yes.
Is it intuition?
Excitement.
Is it fear?
Yes.
Is it like what? Start kind of noticing yourself and be like, which one is it? Really kind of questioning those things. I think is an important thing.
Yes. And it might not have been the right decision. Maybe I should have done that. But again, who knows? I didn't.
Who knows? You're never going to know. And we need to let that stuff go.
Yes. let it go.
So I just want to ask. So last bit, which is just about.
Yes. Sorry,
it's tough being an artist. It's really hard, isn't it?
Hard. So yes.
So I've got just a few questions. So what kind of things do you sort of tell yourself to kind of keep you going when it's hard?
I think I try to remind myself of I mean, talking like this helps, to be honest. It does remind me of what I've done and
all the amazing things you've done.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's not really reminding me of my design ability even, because I can't remember the designs I did throughout all of this.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of designs, and it's well into the hundreds, and I've done that, and they've managed to keep me in work this far. So if I'm not,
and people have bought them, and they've been successful, and all that kind of stuff as well. Just trying to remember, all that stuff.
It's those. I try and give myself a little talking to and just say, but if I don't know that I really push myself. If I'm in a rut, an artistic, creative rut, where I can't be bothered to paint or draw outside of work, I don't give myself too hard a time about that. So I think that's
important,
okay.
isn't it?
I think
otherwise,
I
think it becomes less negative.
Creating every day, and for God's sake, no.
And you don't want it to be negative. Your experience of being creative. You don't want to be like, chastise yourself, like you haven't done enough drawing today.
No, exactly. And forcing yourself. I think there is a point in having a daily practice when you are in the right mind space. I think that is true. Whatever that is, I'm not one for sticking to, I'm going to do this every day. I've set up a 100-day project on my Instagram, and I'm 25 days in and I haven't. That was a few weeks ago. I've let it go, and I will do it at some time. But I think
100 days dotted around the place.
Yeah, it's going to be 100 days dotted around, because if you restrict yourself like that, I'm being creative in other areas instead. So it's like, if you cut yourself off from what you're really led by, because you've got some dogma about what you need to actually do. Yeah. That's been that you're self-imposing, but you're hating it. It's not going to do you any favours, I don't think. No. I think in terms of technique, obviously all techniques need practice. You have to practice and practice and practice to be any good at anything. But again, if you are really drawn to something, that's not going to be a problem. If you're struggling with it, then I think maybe it's not for you. That's the other thing, is listening to your gut and what you feel. And I don't mean as in, don't be an artist or a designer. There's so much scope within what we do. There's so many niches. And that's the other thing. Finding
the right one for you that fits
Finding
with you
what's right for you,
At that time as well, because that changes, doesn't it?
Because you don't... I was going to say, there's also that's normally the reason I'm not creative, is because there's a lot going on in my life otherwise, and I can't feel it. I don't want to make art when I'm not feeling it, so I don't. Or design.
I get it.
Or do. But the main thing I was going to say is I always doodle if I can. If that's the only way I can do, I get a pen out and I just doodle, and I love doing that.
Just a little, bits of paper here and there. Get your hand moving. Do kind of squiggles and whatever. That's kind of quite a nice way, and takes the pressure as well, doesn't it?
Exactly.
Takes the pressure off. Like you're not using. Maybe not
using too many resources.
Got all your paints out, and you've got to.
I mean, I'm still. It's weird. Even now, I'm so lucky to have the space I've got, to have the resources I've got, but I still am really careful with what I use, which is really silly, because it's okay. But Mark's was going to me, just use more paint. You got to use more paint on them. I'm like, well, because I grew up without a lot of it, and it. It was difficult. I sort of haven't got out of that in some ways. But I think you can make art even if you don't have a lot of resources. And I think you can find ways to finding your niche and finding your techniques, but not limiting yourself to the techniques. So if you do everything digitally, maybe every now and again you do go off and draw something or go. I mean, I haven't been drawing for ages. That's the thing I'm really not doing, and I should do. I used to love going to museums and just drawing. It used to be my favourite thing.
Yeah. Maybe you should do that. Maybe that should be a thing that you do next week.
Yeah. No, seriously, I think it is. Because I don't do it enough. And I've got that habit, and that's not great. But
I saw this woman the other day, and she was it was so sunny, and it was in Stanmer Park, and she was just sat there with all her drawing stuff around her under a tree, and I was like, I want to be there. I should just go and do that.
Just go. I know. Again, though, that takes self-conscious. If you're a self-conscious person, like
People are going to
that
look at you,
can
aren't
take
they?
a lot out of you. I used to do that again when I was younger. I used to handle that situation much better, and I'd always draw on trains. I was always drawing people on trains. I used
You
to
get
love
people
doing
kind
that.
of looking at your drawing,
but
don't you?
at that time I didn't care. I think
Yeah.
part of my whole grunge look maybe stopped them getting close to me sometimes. Which now
Get away from me. I'm into punk and grunge.
You've got to make it good. Yeah, no, but I think it's such a joyful thing to do. But actually, if I can get over that, that's the thing. We all need to sometimes just think, oh, it don't matter what people think.
We just need to stop being so. Remember that people don't really care. They're not. They can be a bit curious, but they don't really care. They're just they're just curious for a second, and then they're off. They've got other things on their mind. They might just be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And then that'll be it. They're not going to criticize you. They're not going to say anything unless they're a bit strange people on the train. Sometimes you get, in general, they might have a little look and then they're
drawing people
off.
on the train is slightly more invasive. Maybe that is a bit of a tricky one now.
That's
I think
it.
about
It could be.
Again, it's just do whatever you feel. I think. I do believe in being led by what you're drawn to, what attracts you, what you feel is the right thing to do for you at the time, and learning. So nowadays, learning what I do, there's so many courses out there. I don't even know if you have to do a degree anymore to do it. But
I think I've seen a few online ones that you kind of just pay, and they go through all of this basically that we've spoken about, and all the kind of steps and everything kind of I'm guessing getting an agent and all that kind of stuff as well, and so you can just kind of go straight into that path, which is great for people, but doesn't leave you've got to really know exactly that this is what you want to do, though, I suppose.
Yes, I think that's the thing.
This specific thing. You're not getting that broadness that breadth that you do on a degree.
No.
That can sometimes be useful if you need to chop and change and
because you might find that you want to specialise in something, or you might find that it's not for you. I think the other thing about what I do as well is that I think sometimes the younger designers that I've met with who want to become this to be their job forget that there's actually a process to the making of things. That it's not just about the design, and I think that's really key to understanding whatever you go into, is that the factory process, although seems a bit boring, is actually also part of it, and knowing how your designs translate onto different surfaces is a big part of what I do. It's a big part of understanding how designs look on fabric, but then also is it going to work on a wallpaper? Is it going to work on a rug? They're all going to translate differently, and I think they're things that...
Does that come through experience?
Yeah, I think, again, it's experience, but again, it's something you learn both... Well, in uni, I suppose I learned a lot about textiles and that side of things, because that's what we focused on. But coming out of there and working in companies, you learn that from looking at other products and going, and understanding how it's printed. But it's important to understand that process and the different processes available so that you can bring your designs to life as best as possible.
The best way. Yeah.
Because you can do the most amazing drawing and then print it on, say you printed it on a really slubby, thick linen. If you've got incredible detail on there and it's for a baby and it's tiny, you're going to lose everything. You need to understand where things... It's different to illustration, because the illustration is either... Well, again, illustration gets used on surfaces too, but it's more often paper in form or in digital form, and it's more of a flat thing. Whereas when you're looking at a design that's going to spread across a whole range of products, you need to sort of have some understanding of the differences in what those are and the process, because I think it's important. And again, how you learn that is through... I don't know really how I've learned that. I suppose you just pick it up as you go along.
It's experience, isn't it? I think it must be, And
you keep learning it because, again, it's changed since
there's new things,
the processes are probably different now to what I think they are, in fact, because I haven't updated my information. So, I need to keep doing that like everyone does, because the technology. I mean, AI, I don't know about AI, so that's another form of design.
You mentioned
technology.
about AI before, so that's kind of something that I guess people are using that to make designs, or
Yes.
in your sector. Is that what's
It's
happening?
being talked about a lot on the forums I
Okay.
follow. There's
That's
a lot of
interesting.
artists, especially weirdly, especially new ones, saying, "Oh, I've just got a qualification in this, and now I'm going to give up because this is happening." And it's like, well, I'm not sure that's the case, to be honest.
No, I don't think it is. I think it's good. I mean,
scary.
I don't think it's it can be scary, but I think the way that I use it is to kind of get rid of all the cliche stuff, because it can only build on what's happened before. It can only figure out stuff. It can make new stuff, obviously, but I think there's still room for creativity to be pushed higher from it, because it's kind of, it's pushing up, and then we have to go, right, okay. And do you know what I mean?
It's a tool. It's another tool.
It's a tool you can use. Yeah, absolutely.
And some people will use it. So some brands will go to it and say, "Can I have a duck in repeat on a blue background?" Someone's going to do that. But then
absolutely,
there will be a better design of that out there that that they haven't looked for, that someone else could provide. And I did see a wonderful meme that was all about, your clients barely know what they want normally when they come to you.
Yes, this is it. I saw that one too.
Case for me. Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, it's not always. I've got to be honest. A lot of my clients know exactly what they want. They come to me and they say, "Right, I want this, this, and this," and they do know. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes they do want you to feed them, and the discussion that you have actually feeds. When you're talking about a collection or a new piece that you're making. So it's not that AI can replicate that, but again, that's what I'm saying in terms of my experience. I learnt to design with Illustrator when I went back to designing after journalism. Before that, everything had been hand painted. I've gradually learnt new things as I've gone along. I haven't learnt Procreate yet, but maybe I will. I don't know. So it's all adjustment, and keep knowing the technical aspects of what we do. You do have to keep updating.
Keep on top,
a little bit.
But I think that's just life, isn't it? You have to keep learning, be open to stuff.
Yeah.
Be open to you're never gonna. I think it's with anything, with relationships, with work, with anything. If you feel like, okay, this is it now, I'm set now, this is all I have to do. It's not ever like that, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not like that. It can't be like that. It would be boring.
It doesn't work.
Yeah,
it would. Life would be boring, but. Yeah, you've got to kind of keep pushing yourself.
You do, and I think whether that's pushing yourself to try new things or pushing yourself just in the thing that you're doing, just keep doing it better and better, which is, I mean, that's what I've been doing for 25 years, keep trying to do it.
Yeah, you've been blagging it, you've been going all over the place.
In places where I wasn't supposed to. Yeah, no, just got to keep doing it, Lucy.
Oh, well, on that note, thank you so much, Michelle. You've been bloody
I hope
wonderful.
I haven't
it's so
talked too much. Sorry.
No, you've been fantastic. It's been great to hear all about your adventures and misadventures. And where can people see your work? Can you point them towards your website?
Yes, it's Michele Payne. So it's Michele, because I only have the one L in my name. Payne.
Yeah, one L.
Yeah.
And you're doing all this your abstract painting as well.
I'm abstract painting, and
people can see on there.
Yes. Well, again, this is where I have the dichotomy of, I think for what I do, having it on my website is fine, but to become an artist that's taken seriously by a gallery, I probably shouldn't have my kids' stuff on it. So
I would absolutely agree with that. Yeah. And you know what? In this series, I'm actually speaking to some people who work with galleries, who are artists who work with galleries. So you can listen to that one.
I will. No, but again, I'm going to be
unpicking what they
I will be taking notes. No, definitely, because I think, again, it's another world, and I don't know it, and I'm not trained in it, and I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm also going to keep trying. So it's worth a try.
Do it. This is what we do. We keep pushing. We keep doing stuff, and I wish you all the best with it, and I think you can really make that work. So they're fantastic paintings. I love seeing them at the open house.
Yeah,
so keep going, keep doing it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was great to see you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Michelle.
Thanks, Lucy.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye bye.
I really hope you enjoyed that episode of Becoming an Artist. Hope you enjoyed our chat as much as I did. And don't forget to head to becominganartist.co.uk to see all of the resources and download everything, and also to see our faces if you are listening on the podcast and not watching. So we've got all the videos on there and lots of goodies for you. So visit becominganartist.co.uk. Thanks for listening and watching, and I will see you in the next episode.